of Spring 64th District State Representative Julie Alexander. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Bart.
Happy spring.
Yeah, same to you. Feels good to be back.
Yeah, it feels like spring outside today too, so nice way to start the season.
Yes.
Last week, a very busy week for the State House. I know you were working as a body to approve a gas tax cut, got to the governor, veto. What's your response to that?
Well, I was disappointed. I was disappointed because the families I hear from in our Jackson community are really suffering right now, these high gas prices. It really impacts a family's budget, so I was disappointed.
It was not unexpected. The governor indicated that she would probably veto, and her explanation is, we can't afford it. We'd have to make some cuts in police and corrections and roads.
So, and I would, from my perspective, I disagree. The funding is already there. We've got federal dollars that would, we would backfill that way. The roads would not suffer. We're not taking anything away from the road funding in that piece. We're just using a different source. Mm-hmm. And a portion of that's already paid for. It just makes no sense because families are hurting right now. And then for her to come out with her suggested of the sales tax hold on that, I don't know. It was disappointing for her families.
Yeah, there was also a tax cut that would cut the state income tax, restore child tax credit, make more seniors eligible for deductions. Again, the reasoning, we can't afford it.
Again, we've got more federal dollars right now, Bart. That's what we're so busy doing. I have always been a policy person. I've never been serving on any appropriations committees in the 5 years I've been there. But yet lately I spend more time because there's so much money to be spent that everyone has their hand out looking for dollars. So we've all been actively engaged in making sure that whether they're our own state dollars or the federal dollars, that we're spending them wisely on long-term investments.
So those decisions and the legislation that were affected by the vetoes, is there a chance that there's resurrection for either of the packages by way of some sort of negotiation or by override?
Override, I don't think so because we don't have the votes there. But negotiations possibly, but everyone needs to sit at the table for negotiations. And what I have found, I was just moments ago texting the administration and the department with some votes I have coming up this week. And that's what has to happen. Everyone needs to come to the table. We need to be engaged and not at the last moment right before a vote comes up. And honestly, that's what happened to me with a piece of my legislation that I have been working for on months to take the taxes off of diapers for families and adult incontinence products. To take the taxes off to help those families, especially diapers. All of those items are very expensive. And I had bipartisan co-sponsorship. I had people of the other party supporting it in committee. And minutes before it was ready to come up on the floor, their votes changed.
It was described as a pure political game without any respect to what the legislation was about. It was simply because it was a Republican piece of legislation. I think it surprised a lot of people because earlier the legislature approved and has been signed by the governor the repeal of tampon
right, the
tax.
feminine hygiene.
Very similar.
Right, and that's how and where I came up with the idea. After the governor was willing to support that, after the legislature was willing to support the repeal of the taxes on feminine hygiene, I thought, well, let's just put the next piece in place for our families with small children and seniors. And the usage of the adult incontinence products are going up and up. We have an aged population and many have those health concerns. So to me, it was something we could do to simply help them, and it didn't play out.
Yeah, and I know there were people that said, well, this opens, the Pandora's door to where do you draw the line? Mm-hmm. But really, when you look at what is not taxed, it's items for life necessity like food.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right. And I think when we look at, our health and safety pieces, right, I looked at possibly taking the taxes off of family hygiene products like toothpaste and soaps. And I found that made a much more significant impact to the budget. So I was willing to just, scale back a little bit. Again, it was great support until it wasn't.
now, when you were texting, you weren't driving and texting, were you?
No, sir. I make sure I schedule 5-10 minutes ahead of time, get to my location, and then get caught up as my phone is usually blowing up.
The legislature, though, they're looking at making it illegal to have any kind of a mobile device in operation while you're driving.
Correct.
Right?
Yes, they are. It passed the House.
Yeah, but you didn't vote for that.
I voted no.
Yeah.
Yep. We already have bills. We already have laws on the book that make it very clear distracted driving is not allowed. And what I hear from the people I serve, we know that driving is something that we should not take for granted, and we should all be very focused. And there's some very tragic stories out there, but to continue to create additional laws when distracted driving is already on the books, and many people, especially for a primary offense. So if that phone was in your hand, you would be able to be pulled over. And the people I hear from, they just feel government overreach.
Too much Big Brother?
Yeah,
You did
I
have,
hear that a lot.
But you did have people testify that the
Very
tragic
tragic
stories.
They are tragic stories.
So you think it's covered? The law, distracted driving, covers any offense if someone's on the phone and they're distracted and they mow somebody over.
I mean, that's when I've had the conversations with law enforcement, that's what I have found.
Okay. A couple other pieces of legislation you are shepherding through. One having to do with cottage industries, people that make jams and jellies or bake bread or whatever.
Yes, exactly. And cookies and cupcakes and cakes in their own home, they fall under the cottage food law. And that has not been modified in many years. So the max, the most anyone can bring in right now would be $25,000. And so when we introduced legislation, we increased it to $100,000 because by the time you pay your expenses, right, and your grocery bills, it's not a lot ending up in your pocket. So the current law is $25,000. I started by introducing the legislation, increasing it to $100,000, and through negotiations, and again, this is what it takes to be successful, through the department, through the governor's office, what they would be willing to go with. The compromise of $40,000 was reached, and I thought, it makes the program better. It allows for families to that are working from home, again, in their unlicensed kitchen, but as long as we're ensuring that they are following the law with the labeling, they must have an existing relationship also with the person buying it. That's why you buy it face to face. You buy it at you can go to their porch, pick it up on their porch, or maybe a farmer's market. But we are expanding the law to allow for ordering online and shipping. You could ship it to an individual as long as you already had that existing relationship.
Well, you and I have both bought from cottage, the donation bakery is a good example. The sugar cookie. There's so many of them, but they're using their home kitchen. So the idea to keep it a cap at 40,000 or so, is it a food safety issue?
So to me, it's not a food safety issue as much as when the initial law was introduced, it's a starter, right? It's to let them test the water, see if this is something they want to do before they have to invest in the full licensed kitchen.
So it gets them
Stepping stone.
a better leg up to a
Established
full-time
clients,
business.
and that's the norm. I mean, some people stay by just producing what they want. We find for the most part it's women that are at home, maybe with small children, and just gives them a way to subsidize their industry. And for those that like, again, making jams and jellies or cookies and cupcakes, that's a perfect opportunity for them.
Another issue I know you've been working on right now, according to Heidi Washington, MDOC director, we are short nearly 800 corrections officers statewide. What's your plan to fill
So
that?
we do hear from correction officers on a regular basis as well, and what we hear is, they keep saying, please do something, do something. Well, I'm not in that department. But what we can do is make sure that there are no laws that cause additional regulations or burdens. So I have introduced legislation, and we are hopeful for a vote very soon on the House floor. It's already worked through the committee process. It's bipartisan. It's supported by many, including the department and the correction officers union, plus the department. It would allow those correction officers that are retired to go back and work and not impact their retirement.
There were people
Sorry.
that testified and said, "Oh, these people, they've retired from MDOC. They're not strong enough. They're not swift on the draw." That offended you, didn't it?
Yeah, you caught that. I just said, well, we have to have faith in the department. They're not going to put correction officers in those buildings that aren't physically able to do so, right? I mean, just because we say correction officers that are retired doesn't mean they're aged or seniored. I mean, I'm not seniored, and I could be of that age. I could be retired, right? So I'm like, we have to have faith and trust in the department, and we need to do something to ensure that we have an adequate number of correction officers in our facilities. But the burnout is so extensive because of the hours, mandated hours that they're having to work right now.
Yeah.
So this is a possible solution. I have heard back from many around the state that they're interested in giving back, right? Going back a few hours a week to help relieve the overworked correction officers.
Right. Well, it happens in a lot of other industries, obviously. Another piece of legislation has to do with tutoring.
Yes.
What's that?
So learning loss. We know that over the course of the last 2 years, many children have suffered a learning loss. And in some communities, it's even more so than others because school was canceled, school was virtual, and we need to do something to ensure that we are providing all the opportunities we can to make sure our kids get caught back up to where they need to be. And so this program, Tutoring Dollars for Kids, it is referred to as the Learning Loss Recovery Act. Hopefully we will have a vote very soon, but it would be using those federal dollars, federal COVID dollars that are made specifically for something like this. It puts the money in the hands of parents to secure tutoring. It could be a summer camp, it could be an academic summer camp, it could be an after-school program, it could be some current teachers or retired teachers that want to create some sort of a business to provide those services. But children do much better one-on-one, and we need to do all we can to get the kids caught up to where they need to be.
Sounds like a decent idea. We do have a pile of money we're sitting on. How much?
We do. A lot.
Okay.
A lot.
Billions, right?
Yes.
All right. Thanks,
Yeah.
Julie.
You're welcome.
64th District State Representative, Julie Alexander.